I think the most incredible thing that we did, oddly, was the dam jump, just because it really was one. Well, I mean, the story, which I think is fantastic, is this. So we went out to the dam, which was 880 meters, 880 feet, and we went out and we went ahead of the team. So Simon Crane, who was the stunt coordinator, who had never coordinated a Bond movie before, Simon's mantra is, if we're going to do something, let's do it differently. So he had kind of designed the idea of doing this dam jump, and we went out to rehearse. And there was we had to have a specialist cable built to take the inertia of the jump. And I can't remember what happened now, but we had major weather issues. And of course, it's that classic thing that we were narrowed down to a window. We had like 3 days that we were going to be able to get this jump done. Otherwise, we were going to have to push to the spring. And so we all flew out, and Wayne Michaels, who did the jump, all went out together. And the concept basically was that where he jumped from, at the point he jumped, because the dam scoops, we had a 90-ton crane that went directly out horizontally, so that as Wayne jumped, it pulled him away from the wall of the dam. So we had to get that rigged. We had to get this specialist cable in that the bungee cabled in for Wayne to do it, because we were breaking a world record. Anyway, the day before we shoot, we eventually get the okay that we can do a rehearsal. And so Simon basically built a weight bag that was double the weight of Wayne, just to be sure that this bungee rope could take his weight. So we placed all the cameras. I think we had about 10 cameras placed all around the whole of the dam. And we used pushing the bag off as a rehearsal for all the camera teams to follow. Anyway, cut a long story short, we pushed the bag off after obviously lots of safety briefings and everything. The bag plummets, all the cameras follow it, and it gets to the strain point, and the rope snaps, and the bag plummets to the ground. We're now the day before shooting, so we get on the phone to Barbara and Michael, and Tom Pelsner, our line producer at the time, and we explain what's happened, and they say, "Well, okay, well, what is the solution?" So Simon said, "Well, look, there's one company out in wherever they were, somewhere in the US. They say they have this particular bungee rope that will do it. But in order to get it here, there's no commercial flight that'll get it here on time." So Barbara said, "Look, I'll send my jet." So she sends her jet to pick up this bungee, flies it overnight, gets it to us, and then we're presented with the fact that we've got this one window to shoot the jump. And it's like, well, we need to test the rope. And it's like, well, look, we know it's 10 times the braking strain of the other one. We know we've limited time. Let's talk to Wayne and see if he's prepared to do it. So we talked to Wayne. He said, look, I know what the rope is. I know this is definitely the braking strain that works. Okay, let's just go for it. So Wayne did the jump, having seen the day before that the bungee rope that we've been told was the right rope, was the rope that would take his weight. And I've never seen a man, and God bless him, but because he obviously did it and he did it beautifully, so terrified to do a stunt, I think, before that or since, because it really was truly kind of like his life in his hands. And what was amazing is that he went 880 feet down, but he went 375 feet back up. And he had the intelligence to put the gun back in his holster on the way up, and then pull the gun again to give everyone a second take on the way down. And I think that was just because it was the most terrifying, because it really was life and death at that point. That was probably the most dramatic of all of the things that we did.
I was required to do a perfect swallow dive off the top of this dam from 700 feet. So I physically had to hold this position while hitting really an area in space that would enable me to track away from the wall all the time, and so limit the chances of me actually hitting the wall. People would walk along the top of this dam in absolute silence, and they'd tentatively peer over and go pale at the thought, because this dam was awe-inspiring. They have a trauma clinic ready, an emergency helicopter to rush you there if it all goes wrong. And the vision that sticks in my mind is standing up there, and they've got all the cameras up to speed, and the assistant's just about to give me action. And I could see out of the corner of my eye this little Italian crane driver who looks pale with fright at the thought of what I was doing. And just as I was about to go, he does the sign of the crucifix. And, you know, you have to live with that sort of thing, and you realise that it's sometimes quite a crazy life you lead.
What was it like to witness it?
It was extraordinary, really, because of course, as an assistant director, all you're doing is you're making sure all the the ambulance crews are there, and that that there's a quick escape. We had because of where we were shooting, we had to have an air ambulance with us, for the day of getting. So we had to get him out. And you've got 10 cameras, you've got 10 camera crews, you're shooting on film. So really, you're so involved in the complexity of the logistics that you're just sort of getting on with it. But I just remember vividly when we turned over, like Wayne's face, like literally was blue white, I think, with terror. But he just knew he had to go through with it. So yeah, I think it was, and I don't think I've done anything since where I felt that the stunt person was at greater risk than that, because we'd had what had happened beforehand, and Simon is the safest stunt coordinator. He's a great friend of mine now, and we've, I literally saw him last week, and his attention to safety on everything he did. He did Titanic with over 150 stunt people a day, and and his attention to safety and his design skills and his support for his team is the best in the world, I think. And so he'd done everything there was to do to make sure that it was as safe a jump as possible. And of course, they'd done multiple tests at much lower levels and all of those things. So, but it was just everything just built to this one moment where, like, this is the only opportunity we've got to do this. Otherwise, we're pushing, 5 months or whatever. So it was, I think that was probably the most exhilarating, terrifying, and awe-inspiring to watch, I think.
Wow.
It's a very Bond thing in a way, like going back to before the jump itself. The fact that they say, oh, we'll use our private jet to get this cable from North America over to where you're shooting it. Like, that's just big, because these productions are. But the fact that, Wayne took his life into his hands in that moment, because he trusted the cable, and you have to as a diver or a climber or anything like that. So I get it, but that it's big. It's life or death, even though that's what James Bond is doing on the screen behind the camera. That was also happening. And I didn't know that story. I don't know if people had heard that story before. Next time I see that jump, which I'm sure will be in the next few months, I'll just be like, oh, that guy could have been easily pulverized into nothing.
Yeah. And the final part of it that was, looking back on it, was always an interesting story, is that when we were finding all the camera positions at the base of the dam, and if you Google it, you can see it because it's apparently quite legendary, is a tiny little concrete entrance into where you get into the base, where there's certain controls of the dam and structures of the dam. And so it's a little tiny, like a hut with a concrete roof on it. And we were going down looking for camera positions. And I remember one of the team looking over saying, like, what's all those shards in the roof of the concrete roof? And they said, oh, that's bone. And we said, what do you mean that's bone? And it was bone from previous suicides where someone had landed on the roof, and the impact was so enormous that they'd driven the bone into the concrete. And it kind of, okay, so, but so there was just so many stories like that. Yeah, crazy.
No bad mojo here.
No, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I don't think we told Wayne that. I don't think that we kept that quiet. I think. Yeah.